London, 1842. Society was already bored before the season had truly begun. The balls were too predictable, the scandals too familiar, the dukes too vain, and the suitors too careful to ever do anything truly interesting, until him, the Duke of Ravensworth. A man with a ruined leg, a ruined reputation, and, if gossip were to be believed, a ruined heart. The Tun whispered that God himself had turned his face away from him. Naturally, that made him the most fascinating man in London. What no one expected was that his fate would be tied to a girl the Tun had never heard of. A girl who smelled faintly of lavender, damp earth, and country rain. Her name was Clara Ashdown, and at that particular moment she was sitting in a cramped parlour above a noisy London street, being told her life no longer belonged to her. "Your sister cannot go," her mother said. Not for the first time, not even for the fifth. It was, in fact, the only sentence Lady Ashdown seemed capable of forming that morning. Clara sat very straight in her worn blue day dress. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap, the knuckles white. Her heart beat so loudly she could hear it over the rattle of carriage wheels outside. "I understand," Clara answered. She did not, in truth, understand anything at all. But the Ashdown daughters had not been raised to contradict their mother. One daughter, however, had been raised to be chosen. That daughter was not Clara. Marianne Ashdown, the elder by a single year, was perfection arranged in silk. She stood by the window now, her profile as delicate as a cameo. Her gown was cream muslin, edged with lace. Her honey-gold hair fell in carefully arranged curls over her shoulders. If one had to sacrifice a young woman to a duke with a terrible temper and a tragic limp, Marianne was the obvious offering. "Mother," Marianne whispered. Her voice trembled, though not, Clara suspected, from fear. Marianne was trembling with outrage. "I will not go to him. I will not be buried alive in that drafty London townhouse with a man who barely leaves his study. I am meant for the country, for sunlight, for riding, for fresh air." For once, Clara agreed with her. Marianne truly was meant for all those things. Clara, on the other hand, was apparently meant for none. Lady Ashdown pressed a hand to her temple in dramatic distress. "Marianne, do not be hysterical. The Duke of Ravensworth is a great match. Even now, especially now. Now that his carriage had overturned 3 years ago. Now that his legs had never fully recovered. Now that he walked with a cane and pain carved shadows into his handsome face. Now that his fiancée had broken the engagement with a single, elegant letter and married a healthier earl within the month. Ah, yes. Now he was the perfect match for a family in quiet financial ruin. Clara had overheard the whispers for months. The mortgages, the debts, the land that no longer yielded what it once had. Her father staring too long at unpaid bills. Her mother staring too long at Marianne, as if beauty were a banknote they could spend. The Duke had requested a bride. The Ashdowns had one prepared, until Marianne refused. "I will not," Marianne repeated. Her voice was firm now. "Send Clara instead. She likes small rooms and books and sick people." Clara blinked. It was not an unfair description. She did like books, and sick people. Or rather, she liked healing them. She had learned herbs and poultices from their late grandmother. She had a quiet way with pain, and a stubborn patience that made even the most irritable tenant farmer obey her instructions. But those skills had never been intended as qualifications for marriage. "Marianne," Lady Ashdown hissed, "how could you suggest such a thing?" "Why not?" Marianne demanded. "Clara has always preferred shadows to sunlight. She would not quarrel with a husband who never dances. And the Duke clearly does not wish to be seen. He will barely notice her." Clara felt that one in her bones. He will barely notice her. It was, in essence, the story of her life. There had been other dances, other seasons, though modest, other young men who had looked past her to the brighter star of her sister. Clara had grown used to being the second glance, the afterthought, the quiet girl in the wrong dress at the edge of the ballroom, smiling politely while no one asked her to dance. Rejection, for her, was no single painful blow. It was a constant drizzle. Never dramatic enough for thunder, just enough to leave one permanently damp. "Clara," her mother said. Her voice had turned soft, dangerously soft. "You know how things stand. Your father has done all he can. The estate needs this alliance. Our family needs this alliance. Your sister cannot shoulder such a burden. Her health is delicate." Marianne's health was, in fact, robust enough to ride for hours, flirt for longer, and consume alarming quantities of cake. Clara did not say so. She simply looked at her mother. Lady Ashdown's eyes were not cruel. They were desperate. Desperation could be far sharper than cruelty. "You always said," Clara murmured, "that I was meant for something quiet, something steady, something that would require courage." Lady Ashdown's shoulders sagged with relief. "Oh, my dear," she breathed. "What greater courage than to marry a man the rest of London fears to approach?" Ah, there it was. The Duke of Ravensworth, the powerful villain of this little tale, as society enjoyed calling him. He seldom appeared in ballrooms now. When he did, he moved with that infamous cane, his jaw clenched, his eyes dark as storm clouds over the Thames. Some said he had become cruel. Some said he had become mad. Some said he had been both all along. The truth was far less interesting to the ton. They did not care that his injury pained him night and day. They did not care that he had been betrayed by the woman who swore to marry him. They cared only that he made a tragic figure. The kind one could point at across a ballroom and whisper about between waltzes. A duke who could not dance. What tragedy! What delicious scandal! Now, it seemed, Clara would become part of that scandal. Not the brilliant, envied part, the quiet, forgettable part. The girl no one expected to notice. "Will he know?" Clara asked softly. "Will the Duke know that I am not Marianne?" Silence fell in the little parlor. Outside, a carriage rolled past, iron-shod wheels grinding against the cobblestones. Her mother looked at Marianne. Marianne looked at her reflection in the glass. Neither answered. And so Clara did what she had learned to do all her life. She supplied the missing truth herself. "No," she said, "he will not. Not until it was too late. Not until vows were spoken and papers signed and London society had something very new and very shocking to whisper about. A switch of sisters. A countryside girl turned duchess. A duke made the fool of the season. Ah, but this narrator gets ahead of herself. For now, Clara was still Clara Ashdown. Not yet duchess, not yet bound, not yet locked inside the iron cage of a London title. That transformation required a carriage, a ring, and one rather terrifying visit. 2 days later, the Ashdown carriage rattled through the wealthiest streets of London. Clara sat opposite her mother, her gloved hands twisted together in her lap. She wore Marianne's best gown, ivory silk, embroidered with tiny sprays of green leaves and pale pink roses. It fit Clara well enough, though the color washed the freckles from her cheeks and made her brown hair look plainer than ever. Her bonnet, at least, was hers, a soft blue ribbon tied beneath her chin. A small rebellion. The townhouse of the Duke of Ravensworth loomed ahead, tall, elegant, intimidating. Its black iron railings gleamed. The stone steps had been scrubbed to a near-blinding white. The brass knocker on the door was shaped like a raven with outstretched wings. Of course it was. "Back straight," Lady Ashdown murmured. "Eyes lowered. Do not mention his leg. Do not mention his former fiancé. Do not mention anything at all unless he addresses you first." "So I am to be entirely silent?" Clara asked. Lady Ashdown considered. "Not entirely. If he asks if you are pleased to marry him for the love of all that is holy, say yes." Clara almost laughed. The sound rose in her chest. It felt wild, slightly hysterical. "Yes," she said instead. The footman opened the carriage door. Cold London air rushed in. Clara stepped down. Her heart hammered so loudly she feared the entire street might hear it. The door of the townhouse swung open as they approached. A solemn butler admitted them into a hall lined with dark wood paneling and portraits of very serious men wearing very serious wigs. "Lady Ashdown, Miss Ashdown," he intoned. "The Duke is expecting you. This way." They followed him through quiet corridors. Every surface gleamed, the floors, the mirrors, the polished banister that curved up the staircase. Clara's reflection slipped in and out of view as they walked, a pale ghost in borrowed silk. At last, they stopped before a set of double doors. The butler lifted a hand. For one reckless moment, Clara almost turned and fled. Back to the countryside, back to her herbs and her muddy boots and her simple, unremarkable life. A life in which no one expected her to heal a man the entire city had given up on. Because that, though no one had said it aloud, was what this marriage truly was. An unspoken bargain. Money and title for the Ashdowns, care and quiet devotion for the Duke of Ravensworth. Clara swallowed. If she could ease pain in a tenant farmer's arthritic hands, could she not at least try with a duke's ruined leg? A tiny spark lit within her chest. Hope. Infuriating, fragile hope. The doors swung open. The study was spacious, lined with shelves of books that climbed all the way to a high, painted ceiling. A fire burned in the marble hearth, casting a warm glow over Persian carpets and heavy mahogany furniture. By the tall window, leaning one hand on an ebony cane, stood the Duke, Adrian Ravensworth. His hair was dark, cut shorter than fashion dictated. His jaw was shadowed, as if he had not slept well in several nights. His shoulders were broad beneath a perfectly cut black tailcoat, but it was his eyes that stole Clara's breath. They were not cold, as gossip claimed. They were not empty. They burned, with anger, with pain, with something fierce and exhausted that made Clara's fingers itch to reach for her little pouch of herbs, as if anything she carried might soothe a torment that deep. "Lady Ashdown," he said. His voice was low, smooth. "I see you have brought your daughter." Clara curtsied. He did not bow. His hand tightened on the cane. Every movement cost him. She could see it now. "Your Grace," Lady Ashdown replied, "as we agreed, my daughter, Marianne." The lie slid into the air between them. So simple, so polite. Clara felt its weight settle against her skin. The Duke studied her. His gaze moved from her bonnet ribbons to her gloved hands and back to her face. Slow, measuring. "I was told," he said at last, "that Miss Marianne Ashdown adored riding, hunting, and the noise of the London season." Clara's heart lurched. Her mother stiffened. "I do hope," the Duke continued softly, "that you are capable of honesty, Lady Ashdown. For I have no further tolerance for pretty lies." Ah, there it was. The first crack of thunder in a story built on drizzle. Our quiet country girl had stepped quite unsuspectingly into the eye of a storm, and the Duke of Ravensworth was not nearly so blind as the Ashdowns had hoped. One wonders, dear listener, will this little deception shatter before the ink is dry on the marriage contract? Or will London receive the scandal it so desperately craves? Tell me in the comments. Would you confess everything at once, or play the Duchess in borrowed silk and see how long the masquerade can last? Clara did not look away from the Duke. She had learned long ago that lowering her gaze only made people forget she was there. "I assure you, Your Grace," Lady Ashdown began. Her smile was bright, brittle. "Marianne—" "The woman before me," he interrupted, "is not the creature described in your letters?" He did not raise his voice. He did not shout. But something in the room shifted, as if the air itself had been called to attention. Clara's throat went dry. "You wrote," the Duke continued, looking at Lady Ashdown, not Clara, "that your eldest daughter adores crowds, that she lives for the London season, that she cannot bear solitude." A muscle in his jaw tightened. "You believed that would please me." Lady Ashdown's fingers clutched her reticule. "I merely wished to present her in the best light, Your Grace. Ah. His eyes moved back to Clara. Then perhaps you can explain, Lady Ashdown, why this young woman looks as though she has been dragged here against her will. He was not wrong, but it is rarely wise to tell a duke so. Shyness, Clara's mother said quickly. She is overwhelmed naturally to meet you at last. At last. As if Clara had not first heard his name only a fortnight ago. As if she had spent her girlhood dreaming of this precise moment. As if any girl ever dreamed of being offered like a bandage to a wounded man and told to be grateful. The Duke took a slow breath. He shifted his weight. Clara noticed the small signs now. The way his knuckles whitened around the cane. The nearly imperceptible tension in his shoulders. Pain, always there, always waiting. Leave us, he said. Just like that. Lady Ashdown's composure faltered. Your Grace, it would be highly inappropriate for my daughter to remain with you unchaperoned. He turned his head toward her. The look he gave would have frozen a lesser woman entirely. She is to be my wife, is she not? If we cannot endure 10 minutes of conversation alone, I doubt we shall survive a lifetime. Lady Ashdown hesitated. Her gaze darted to Clara. Clara gave the smallest nod. It was absurd, really. The child reassuring the parent. But there it was. Very well, Lady Ashdown whispered. I shall wait in the hall. She swept out. The door closed behind her with a soft click. And Clara was alone. Alone with the most feared duke in London. The fire crackled. Someone coughed in the corridor beyond, then retreated. The silence between them stretched. You may sit, he said at last. Clara moved to the nearest chair. Her knees felt unreliable. She smoothed her skirts, folded her hands, counted 3 breaths. I am afraid, the Duke said slowly, that we must begin with an unpleasant truth. Clara swallowed. Very well, Your Grace. My former fiancé lied to me. My family lied to me. Half of London has lied about me. He lifted his eyes to hers. So I have developed something of an allergy to falsehoods. His gaze did not waver. Tell me, Miss Ashdown, is your name Marianne? The question hung in the air like a blade. A gentler woman might have fainted. A cleverer one might have found a perfect lie. Clara did neither. Her heart thudded against her ribs. Her mouth felt painfully dry. My name, she said quietly, is Clara. There. It was done. A single step off the cliff. Now she would discover the height. Something flared in his eyes. Not surprise. He had known. He had likely known the moment she walked into the room. Clara, he repeated. The name sounded different in his mouth, sharper, more real. And are you the eldest daughter of your family, Clara? No, Your Grace. And do you adore riding and hunting and the noise of the London season? I prefer books and gardens, she confessed. Ah, he tilted his head. If you continue in this outrageous habit of answering questions honestly, Miss Clara, you may well shock me into recovery. The dry humor in his tone startled her. A corner of her mouth quivered, nearly a smile. Nearly. You are angry, she said softly. You should be. A duke. A powerful man. A wounded man. Tricked. Again. He regarded her more closely. You do not defend your mother. Clara stared at the patterned carpet. The swirling reds and deep blues blurred. My mother is frightened, she said. Fear makes people foolish and cruel. But I am not here to justify what she has done. Well then. He leaned carefully against the edge of the desk. Why are you here? The simplest questions are sometimes the hardest to answer. Clara lifted her gaze and, for the first time since entering the room, truly met his eyes. I am here, she said, because my family needs your name. And you, her voice faltered. He waited. You, she finished, may need someone who is not afraid of the dark. His brows rose. Is that what they told you? That you were being sent to live in darkness? No, Your Grace, no one needed to tell me. I have eyes and ears. London calls you cursed. They say your house is haunted by your temper, by your pain, by all the things you lost when your carriage overturned. He stilled. Ah, there it was. The line one does not cross in polite conversation. The accident. The thing everyone whispers about but no one names. I should not have said that, Clara murmured. I apologize. Do you? He studied her. There are a great many people in London who speak of my injury. They do so behind their fans, behind their gloves, behind my back. He shifted his weight again. The movement was small. It was enough to send a faint shadow across his face. Very few have had the courage to say the word overturned in my presence. Courage. The word warmed and stung at the same time. I do not see the point in pretending your pain does not exist, Clara said quietly. You do not strike me as a man easily distracted by frivolous conversation. A huff of sound escaped him. Not quite a laugh. Not yet. I was promised, he remarked, a merry, flirtatious, shallow young woman who would lift my spirits with her sparkling chatter. His gaze moved over her again. Slow, thoughtful. Instead, I find myself confronted by an honest, serious creature who insists upon acknowledging my pain as if it were a person in the room. He tapped the cane once against the floor. I am unsure which is more dangerous. Clara's fingers tightened over the fabric of her skirt. Dangerous, Your Grace. To a man who has grown accustomed to solitude. The words were offhand. They sank deeper than he likely intended. I do not wish to trap you, Clara said suddenly. The confession tumbled out faster than she could stop it. I know you expected my sister. I know my mother deceived you. If you send us away today, I will not blame you. The room went very quiet. It was not the quiet of courtesy. It was the quiet of something shifting beneath the surface, of fault lines forming in places no one could see. You would give up a coronet so easily, he asked. No protest, no tears, no dramatic scene in which you declare you cannot live without becoming a duchess. I have lived all my life without becoming a duchess, Clara replied. I imagine I could continue. His mouth twitched. Most girls of your age dream of dukes. Most girls of my acquaintance dream of not being cold in winter, Clara said, and of their fathers not worrying over unpaid bills. Ah. He paused. So that is the measure of your ambition. Warmth, security, less worry. And a garden, Clara added quietly, if it is not too impertinent to ask. That, dear listener, was the moment something unexpected happened. The Duke of Ravensworth smiled. It was a brief thing, crooked, as if the muscles had forgotten how. But it lit his features in a way no gossip column had ever described. Your list of demands is shockingly modest, he said. I believe I can furnish you with walls, roof, and a plot of earth. The reduction of worry, unfortunately, I cannot guarantee. Marrying a duke is rarely tranquil business, particularly one with a haunted house and a ruined reputation in London. His mockery turned inward now, sharper on himself than on her. Clara leaned forward very slightly. Your Grace, she said, I do not care what London says. I have seen good men broken by pain and become harsh. I have also seen them become gentle. You do not seem gentle. Yet you have not raised your voice. You have not insulted my family, though you have every right. A shadow flickered in his eyes. Do not test the extent of my restraint, Clara. The way he said her name did treacherous things to her heartbeat. I do not test it, she answered. I am simply deciding if I can trust you with the rest of my life. Silence. Then slowly he inclined his head. Very well. Let us both be honest for once. Your family needs my title and my fortune. I need a wife who will not scream at the sight of my scars, or faint when I cannot dance. I also need someone who can withstand the curiosity of London without dissolving into tears. He held her gaze. Do you cry easily, Clara? Not where anyone can see, she said. His lips curved again, a faint, reluctant amusement. You are not the bride I ordered, he said, but you may be the bride I require. The words should have frightened her. Instead, something in her chest loosened. Then you will proceed with the marriage, she asked, even knowing I am not Marianne. Oh, I knew that the moment you walked into my house, he said dryly. The woman described in your mother's letters would have been performing for my benefit by now. You, Clara, look as though you were trying not to vanish into the bookcases. Her cheeks warmed. He had noticed that. He had noticed her. There is one condition, he added. Of course, she murmured. The iron cage had a latch after all. He merely held the key. You will not lie to me, he said, ever, about anything. No matter how small, no matter how comfortable the lie might be, if you are unhappy, you will say so. If I hurt you, you will tell me. If society cuts you, you will not pretend it does not wound. Clara's throat tightened. No one has ever asked that of me, she admitted. What have they asked? That I be quiet, she said, and grateful. Then allow me to begin our acquaintance badly by asking the opposite, he replied. Be truthful, and eventually, perhaps, be cruel if you must, but not silent. The room seemed to tilt, not outwardly, not for him, for her. Something old and rigid within her cracked. She had spent a lifetime swallowing words. Now a man the world called cold was asking her to speak. I can promise to try, she said. Trying, he replied, is more than most have ever offered me. He straightened slowly. The effort cost him. She saw it. His hand pressed more firmly on the cane. His jaw clenched just enough. Without thinking, Clara half rose. Wait, she blurted. He stilled. Your leg, she said. The way you moved just now. The pain spikes when you shift from the window to the desk, does it not? The angle is wrong for that side. His eyes sharpened. What do you know of such things? I grew up tending to wounded farmhands and stubborn old men who refused to rest, she said breathlessly. I may not know the names of the bones, but I know pain when I see it. If you would allow me to examine... She broke off, realizing what she had just offered. A country girl, offering to lay hands on a duke's injured leg in his private study. Oh, the scandal. Somewhere in London, a gossip sheet tingled in anticipation. Slowly, Adrian Ravensworth's expression changed. Curiosity. Something else beneath it. Hope. So faint it could almost be mistaken for anger. You believe you can heal what half the physicians in London could not, he asked. No, Clara said simply. I believe I can try to lessen the pain. And if I fail, you will at least know I did not marry you for your ballroom invitations. Most people marry me for the scandal, he said wryly, or the title, or the absurd number of staircases in my country estate. Staircases can be dangerous, she murmured. His eyes glinted. For a man with a cane, Miss Clara, everything is dangerous, including you. The door opened then, too soon, too perfectly timed. Lady Ashdown swept back in, cheeks flushed. Your Grace, she said breathlessly, I trust all is well. The Duke did not look at her. He kept his gaze on Clara. When the banns are read, he said calmly, they will be for his Grace, the Duke of Ravensworth, and Miss Clara Ashdown, not Marianne. If this is unacceptable, Lady Ashdown, you may withdraw your daughter now. Lady Ashdown froze. Clara's heart pounded. What matters to you, Lady Ashdown? He asked softly. The name on the announcement, or the fact that your daughter will be a Duchess of London. There it was. Power, wrapped in silk and courtesy. The room held its breath. Lady Ashdown swallowed. Clara will do excellently, she said. Her voice shook. Of course she will. The Duke inclined his head once. Then it is settled. He shifted his attention back to Clara. For now, Miss Clara, you may go home and prepare yourself for the most tedious process in existence. Wedding arrangements. He lifted his cane slightly, a wry salute. And I shall prepare myself for something far more alarming. Clara blinked. More alarming than marriage, Your Grace. Allowing a woman who does not lie, he said, to walk freely through my house. Ah, dear listener, London believes itself well acquainted with scandal, but how unprepared it truly is for this one. A duke who demands honesty, a future duchess who offers healing instead of flattery, a marriage born not of love at first sight, but of pain recognized and courage quietly offered. Tell me in the comments below, do you believe such a union can survive the ballroom whispers of London? Or will the first true test of honesty shatter what has barely begun? News in London travels faster than a carriage on smooth cobblestones, especially when the news smells like scandal. By the next morning, every respectable drawing room had already heard the whisper. The Duke of Ravensworth was to marry. Again. This alone would have been enough to send fans fluttering and teacups trembling. But then someone read the name aloud. Miss Clara Ashdown. Not Marianne. Not the glittering horse-mad beauty whose praises Lady Ashdown had been singing all season. Clara. The quiet one. The one hardly anyone had ever noticed standing at the edge of the ballroom. Invisible girls, it seems, make the loudest stories when finally dragged into the light. Far away from London's polished gossip, in the Ashdown house, the news did not arrive as a whisper. It arrived as a storm. You! Marianne's voice rang through the upstairs corridor. Clara paused with her hand on her bedroom door. She closed it slowly and turned. Marianne stood at the end of the hallway, still in her morning wrapper, hair a glorious, irritated tumble down her back. Her eyes blazed. Our mother informs me, Marianne said, that you are to be a duchess. Clara folded her hands. Her night's sleep had been thin and broken. Her thoughts had circled between fear and something far more dangerous. Hope. I am to marry the Duke of Ravensworth, she said quietly. That is not quite the same as being a duchess. Not yet. Oh, spare me your humility, Marianne snapped. You, Clara, little mouse Clara, you can barely make conversation with a stranger. You will wither in London. You will choke in those ballrooms. You will never survive the scandal. Clara felt the words as if they were stones, heavy, sharp, not entirely untrue. I did not steal him from you, she said. You refused him. I refused a broken man, Marianne shot back. I did not refuse a title, a townhouse, jewels. Do not pretend you are marrying for love. Clara flushed. Love. What a reckless word to throw into the corridor so early in the day. I am marrying for necessity, she said. For our parents, for the estate, for... You are marrying for the same reason any of us would, Marianne cut in. Because you were chosen. Her voice cracked on the last word. Chosen. The word hung in the air between them like a ghost. Clara had spent her whole life watching men choose Marianne. In dances, in conversation, in admiration. Never her. Not once. She had become fluent in the art of being overlooked. I did not ask for this, Clara whispered. If he had insisted upon you, I would not have stood in the way. Of course you would not, Marianne said bitterly. You are too good for that, too patient, too willing to sacrifice, and now, after all that goodness, you are rewarded with a duke. She laughed then. The sound was sharp and joyless. Tell me, Clara, will you heal his leg with your virtue? Will you mend his heart with your silence? Will you smile sweetly while London tears you apart? Clara's fingers dug into the fabric of her skirt. I do not intend to be silent, she said. Not with him. Marianne blinked. As if he would listen to you. He is a duke. He is a man in pain, Clara replied. Men in pain sometimes listen when no one else dares speak plainly. Marianne's shoulders sagged. For a moment the temper burned out, and Clara saw the frightened girl beneath. I could not do it, Marianne whispered. I could not wake every morning to a man who limped toward me as a constant reminder of the accident, of what he used to be, of what he lost. Clara's anger softened. She moved a step closer. You were honest with yourself, she said. That is not cowardice, Marianne. Cowardice would be to marry him and secretly resent every cane stroke. Marianne shook her head. You think you are so brave, she murmured. I think, Clara said slowly, that someone must stand beside him who does not flinch when he walks into a room. Marianne looked at her then, really looked. You love him already, she accused. Clara almost laughed. I do not know him, she said. Not yet. But I saw his eyes, and I recognized the way he held his pain. I have tended to such men before, just never one quite so tall, or so stubborn. You will disappear into his shadow, Marianne warned. London will swallow you whole. Then I shall learn to cast my own shadow, Clara replied. It surprised her, that sentence, as if it had been waiting inside her for years. Marianne wrapped her arms around herself. You will fail. Possibly, Clara agreed. But I would rather fail trying than never try at all. Downstairs, the front door opened. Voices drifted upward. A footman's measured tone. Her mother's strained politeness. A carriage pulling away. Marianne turned her head. Go and see which titled person you belong to now, she said sharply. This house is already treating you as if you were made of glass. Clara's heart thudded. She descended the stairs with more care than was strictly necessary. At the bottom, in the hall, Lady Ashdown stood clutching a heavy parchment envelope. The dark red wax seal bore the impression of a raven with outstretched wings. The Ravensworth crest. For you, Lady Ashdown breathed. As if there were any doubt. Clara took the envelope. Her fingers trembled. The script on the front was precise and strong. Miss Clara Ashdown. Not Marianne. Not the elder daughter. Not a mistake. Clara. She broke the seal. Inside, the letter was brief. Miss Ashdown. The banns will be read in 3 Sundays' time. I ask that you and your family attend the first reading at St. George's, not for the benefit of society, for mine. There is something I wish to observe. Yours, Ravensworth. Clara frowned. Observe, she murmured. What does he expect to see in a church? Approval, Lady Ashdown said quickly. Respect. The support of the ton. Clara shook her head. No. This feels different. Lady Ashdown reached for the letter. Clara folded it first, gently, protectively. She tucked it back into the envelope. Mother, she said, please do not attempt to answer for him when he is not in the room. He made one condition yesterday. Lady Ashdown's eyes narrowed. What condition? That I not lie to him, Clara said. In return, I think it only fair I do not lie about him either. Her mother flinched as if struck. You speak as if you already stand on his side. I stand, Clara answered softly, where the truth does, or at least where it tries. Her mother sank into the nearest chair. Her composure crumpled at the edges. You have always been the quiet one, Lady Ashdown whispered. I did not realize you were also the sharp one. Clara smiled faintly. At times, I did not realize it either. The next 3 days passed in a blur of fittings, lists, and whispered arguments. A London modiste was summoned with scandalous haste. Clara endured pins and measuring tapes, and a great deal of muttering about how her figure was far better than one had expected from such a retiring girl. Gowns in shades of soft blue, pale green, and ivory were ordered. Not Marianne's bold colors. Not look at me crimson. These were quieter. But not weak. When Clara turned before the mirror, she scarcely recognized the woman she saw. A future duchess. Her. Of all people. In the evenings, when the house finally fell still, Clara lit a candle and unfolded the Duke's letter again. There were no declarations of love, no poetry, no flattery, just that steady, uncompromising line. There is something I wish to observe. What? Her courage, her composure, her capacity to survive London's stare. Or perhaps something more curious, whether she would stand beside him in a church full of people and not shrink, whether she would look at him the same way she had in the study, as a man, not a monster. The morning of the first banns dawned grey and damp. London seemed carved from cloud. Clara dressed in a dove-blue gown, her bonnet trimmed with simple white ribbon. No excessive feathers, no attempt to draw the eye. She could not have managed that, even if she tried. Her hands shook as she tied the ribbon beneath her chin. In the carriage, on the way to St. George's, her father finally spoke. He had been so very quiet through all this. Clara, he said gruffly, if at any point you wish to withdraw, you may tell me. I will find another way. She looked at him, at the lines of worry etched deep around his eyes, at the way his fingers twisted his hat, revealing the raw spot on the brim. "There is no other way," she said gently. "Not without losing everything. And even if there were, Father, I do not wish to withdraw." He blinked. "You do not?" "No," Clara said. "I am afraid. Of London, of scrutiny, of his temper. But I am more afraid of spending the rest of my life wondering if I turned away from the one thing I might have been meant to do." He stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "You sound," he said, "like your grandmother." That, for Clara, was the highest blessing he could have offered. St. George's loomed ahead. The great stone church was already crowded. Carriages lined the street. Ladies in silks and satins stepped carefully from polished doors. Men adjusted gloves and cravats, pretending they had not risen early just to witness the spectacle. Inside, the air smelled of incense, stone, and faintly of wet wool. The Ashdown family took their place near the front. Clara could feel the eyes on her, curious, assessing, pitying, some already calculating how quickly her marriage might fail. And then he entered. The Duke of Ravensworth moved down the aisle with measured steps. The cane struck the stone floor in a steady rhythm. Tap, pause, tap. He wore dark blue today instead of black. It suited him more than mourning ever had. He did not glance at the pews, not at the ladies pretending not to stare, not at the men pretending not to judge. He looked only at Clara, and she, poor creature, forgot entirely how to breathe. He stopped at the end of her row, offered his arm. "Miss Clara," he said quietly, "will you stand with me while the world watches?" She placed her hand on his sleeve. Her fingers rested just above the line where muscle became scar and tension and carefully controlled pain. "Yes, Your Grace," she said. "I will." Ah, dear listener, you may think this a simple moment. Two people standing side by side in a church while their names are read aloud. But make no mistake, this was a declaration far louder than any hymn. He was asking, "Can you bear my scandal?" She was answering, "Can you bear my honesty?" Tell me in the comments. Would you have taken that Duke's arm in front of all London? Or would you have fled the church and chosen a quieter life over such dangerous love? The reading of the banns should have been a formality, a simple announcement, a polite acknowledgement, a quiet step toward a future already arranged. But nothing involving the Duke of Ravensworth was ever simple or quiet. As Clara stood beside him in St. George's, the rustle of the congregation felt like 1,000 whispers slicing through the air. "Is that her? The wrong sister? Plain little creature, isn't she? He must be desperate indeed." Clara pretended not to hear. The Duke did not pretend at all. His jaw flexed once, sharply, precisely, the kind of movement a seasoned general makes before launching a battle. When the vicar spoke, "I publish the banns of marriage between Adrian, Duke of Ravensworth, and Miss Clara Ashdown." A wave rippled through the pews. Some ladies straightened, some hid smiles behind their fans. A few looked personally offended, as though Clara's existence had been designed solely to inconvenience them. Clara kept her eyes forward. But the Duke, the Duke looked at them one by one, unblinking, unapologetic, a silent warning wrapped in aristocratic disdain. And suddenly the whispers softened, not because the tongue was kind, but because the tongue was practical. One did not openly provoke a man like Adrian Ravensworth. When the vicar dismissed the assembly, Clara exhaled for the first time in minutes. She tried to withdraw her hand from the Duke's arm. He held it a heartbeat longer. "Miss Clara," he murmured, "if you flee now, they will eat you alive." "I do not intend to flee," she whispered back. "I only intend to breathe." "Ah," he said, "an underrated luxury." He crooked his arm again, not forcing, inviting. "Walk with me," he said quietly. And so they walked down the aisle, between the stairs, out into the cold London air. The moment the church doors closed behind them, Clara felt the breath of freedom wash over her. There, beside the steps, waited the Ravensworth carriage. Black lacquer, silver trim. the raven crest gleaming like an omen. The Duke helped Clara inside first. He moved slower today, the pain more evident after the long walk through the church. Clara noticed. He noticed her noticing. "Do not pity me," he said without anger. "I don't," she replied softly. "I simply see you." He froze. Not dramatically, not visibly, just quietly, as if no one had spoken to the man behind the title in a very long time. The carriage began to move. For a few moments, there was only the steady rhythm of wheels on cobblestones. Then, "You were calm today," he said, "more than I expected." "I was terrified," Clara admitted, "and yet you stood." "I've learned it is possible to be terrified and still upright." A faint breath, half laugh, half disbelief, escaped him. "I find you inconveniently honest, Miss Clara." "Inconvenient." "For me," he clarified, "I am accustomed to being feared, not evaluated." "I wasn't evaluating," she murmured. "I was concerned." He turned his head. A slow, measured movement. "You think the pain is worse today?" Clara hesitated, then nodded. "You leaned more heavily on the cane leaving the church, and your left shoulder tightened when we walked. That means your right leg is straining to compensate." He stared at her. Most women would not have noticed. Most men would have pretended not to. But Clara spoke as if reciting something obvious, as if discussing weather and not the private discomfort of a duke. "You observe too much," he said softly. "I'm sorry. Do not apologize. I simply do not know what to do with a woman who sees everything." Clara traced the embroidery on her gloves. "You do not have to do anything about it," she whispered. "You simply have to let me help." The Duke looked away, toward the window, where London passed in grey streaks and fog. "That," he said quietly, "is precisely what terrifies me." They fell into silence again. But it was not cold, nor strained, nor uncomfortable. It was awareness, warm, dangerous, new. When the carriage stopped at the Ashdown house, the Duke did not immediately signal for the footman. "Miss Clara." "Yes, Your Grace." "There is one more matter." Clara held perfectly still. "Your family," he paused, "will not interfere in my house." Clara blinked. "My mother means well," she said. His dark eyebrow arched. "Does she?" "She is frightened." "As are you." "Yes," Clara admitted, "but she hides it with schemes. I hide it with herbs." He stared at her glove again, at the small stitching near her wrist, at the fragile steadiness of her posture. "You may bring your herbs," he said at last. "You may bring whatever you need, but you will not bring their lies." Clara nodded. "And you," she whispered, "will you bring your truth?" His gaze lifted. "I will bring more truth than you expect," he said, "and some you may not like." "I do not require pleasant truths," she said, "just true ones." Something in him softened, barely, but unmistakably. "You are a peculiar woman, Miss Clara." "So I'm told." With that, he lifted his cane, tapped the roof of the carriage. The footman opened the door, but before Clara stepped down, the Duke added, "Next Sunday, when the banns are read again, I want you to stand with me, not because you must, but because you choose to." Clara's breath caught. I will try." "That," he said, "is all I ask." She descended the steps, turned, and for the first time in her life, Clara Ashdown felt the strange, dangerous spark of being seen, not as a shadow, not as the substitute sister, not as a mistake, but as a woman a duke might, one day, trust, maybe even want. The carriage pulled away. Clara's heart did not calm for a very long time. London did not sleep on scandals. It merely paused to powder its nose. By the middle of the week, the story of the wrong sister had fully bloomed. Some whispered that Clara had schemed to snatch the Duke. Others insisted the Duke had been tricked and was too proud to call off the engagement. The truth, as always, was far less entertaining, which is precisely why no one believed it. While the ton gossiped, a small, unremarkable carriage rolled through the quieter streets of London. Inside sat Clara, hands folded, heart racing, again. She had been invited, no, summoned, to Ravensworth House, not for a ball, not for a tea, for something far stranger. Bring whatever you require for your herbal experiments. That was what the Duke had written. Herbal experiments. As if she were some mildly alarming scientist rather than a woman who knew how to make willow bark tea. Clara's little basket sat beside her. Glass bottles clinked softly with each bump of the road. Dried leaves rustled. Smells of lavender, comfrey, arnica, and mint mingled in the air. The Ashdown coachman glanced back once. "You certain about this, miss?" he asked gruffly. "No, Thomas," Clara said, "but certainty seems rather scarce these days." The coachman shook his head. "If he raises his voice, you send word. I'll drive this carriage straight through his front door." Clara smiled. "I promise to keep you and the door safe." The carriage halted. Ravensworth House towered above her once more. Dark stone, tall windows, iron railings that looked as though they were designed to keep things in as much as out. The butler greeted her with a bow that was almost respectful. "Miss Clara." No hesitation now, no confusion. She was not a substitute. She was expected. "This way." They passed through the hall, past portraits of unsmiling men and equally unsmiling women who presumably had never had a frivolous thought in their lives. Clara's steps echoed softly. At last, the butler opened a door she had not seen before. "The morning room," he announced, and his grace. The morning room was flooded with light. Tall windows overlooked a small formal garden, the winter branches bare but carefully arranged. Cream walls, soft blue sofas, a tea tray on a low table, and the Duke, seated in a high-backed chair, one leg stretched out, the cane resting beside him. He was not wearing his jacket, just a white shirt and waistcoat, sleeves rolled to the forearms. The sight of bare skin was, of course, entirely improper for a gentleman at this hour, which makes it unsurprising that Clara almost tripped. "Miss Clara," he said. His voice grounded her, steady, low. "Your Grace," she replied. She dipped in a curtsy, nearly losing hold of her basket. He noticed. His mouth twitched. "Armed for battle, I see." She glanced at the basket. "At worst, Your Grace, I can assault you with chamomile." "God forbid," he murmured. "Sit." She chose the chair opposite him. Not too close, not too far. The space between them was filled with light, dust motes, and unspoken questions. "You wish to see how I walk," he said. No preamble, no attempt to soften the subject. "I wish to see how you move in general," Clara answered. "If I am to help with the pain, I must know how it behaves." "How it behaves," he repeated, as if it were an ill-mannered guest. "It is," she said quietly. "It arrived uninvited and refuses to leave." He stared at her. "Stand, then," she said gently, "if you are willing." "If I were not willing, Miss Clara," he replied, "we would be discussing the weather." He pushed himself up from the chair. The movement was controlled, practiced. He leaned on the cane. The right leg did most of the work. The left moved, but stiffly. Clara's healer mind took over. She watched the lines of strain, the way his shoulders compensated, the slight twist in his spine. "Walk toward the window, please," she said. The Duke of Ravensworth, terror of ballrooms and nightmare of gossip columns, obeyed. He walked to the window, turned, came back. Each step carved something sharp across his face. Pain, anger, a hint of humiliation. "Again," she murmured. His eyes flicked to hers. There was a challenge there, but also trust. Thin, new. He walked again. When he returned, he leaned heavily on the cane. "Enough," he said shortly. "Yes," she agreed. "You may sit." He sank back into the chair with a faint hiss of breath. She pretended not to hear it. "Your physicians," Clara asked, "what did they say?" "That I am fortunate to walk at all," he replied. "That I should accept my limitations. That time would do what it could, and that I should be grateful it had done anything." "And are you?" "Grateful." "Yes." He stared out the window for a long moment. At first, he said. Yes, I was grateful to be alive. Then I was grateful to leave the bed. Then to stand. Then to take a step. But gratitude, Miss Clara, eventually begins to choke when fed only on what has been lost. Clara's heart twisted. She knew that feeling. Has anyone, she asked softly, spoken to you of strengthening what remains rather than mourning what was taken? No. Then allow me to be the first. She set the basket on the low table, opened it. Strange scents floated into the refined air. Comfrey and willow, bark for the pain, she explained. Lavender for sleep, ginger for circulation, and oil infused with arnica to help the muscles recover after you walk. His brows rose. You intend to press these into me? Yes. And if I refuse, I will leave the basket here, she said calmly. Eventually, curiosity will defeat your pride. He let out something dangerously close to a laugh. You presume much. I observe much, she corrected, and I have already seen that you prefer sharp, efficient solutions over pity. If this does nothing, you may throw my herbs into the fire and tell me never to darken your doorstep again. He studied her. Very well, he said at last. Do your worst. Not my worst, Your Grace, she murmured. My best. She poured a little oil into her palm. May I? She did not finish the question. She did not need to. The answer mattered more than anything that might come after. Slowly, he loosened the ties at the bottom of his left trouser leg, rolled the fabric up enough to reveal the damaged limb. Clara's breath caught. The scars were pale now, but still angry in shape. Twisted lines. A long, ragged mark along the calf. A faint indentation near the knee where something had once broken. She did not gasp. She did not flinch. She simply observed, gently, professionally, humanly. Does it pain you more here? She asked, fingers hovering near the knee. Or here? She indicated lower, near the shin. Knee, he said tightly, and along the back. Hamstring, she murmured. May I touch? He nodded once. She laid her fingers carefully on his skin. Warm, tense. The air between them shifted. This was not a ballroom touch, not a flirtation. It was something far more intimate. Trust with no silk to soften it. As she worked the oil into the muscles, she felt the knots. Solid, stubborn, resentful. Breathe, she said softly. I am breathing. Like a man bracing for battle, she replied. Not like a man resting in his own house. That is because my house has not felt restful in quite some time. Her fingertips pressed slightly deeper. He exhaled. This will not mend bones, she said, but it may remind your muscles that they are not your enemies. I thought my body had declared war on me years ago. Then consider this a peace negotiation. One corner of his mouth curved. You negotiate like a general. No, Your Grace, she said. I negotiate like a woman who has seen too many men give up walking before their bodies truly did. She felt it then, beneath her fingertips, a small release, a loosened knot. His breath changed, deeper, less tight. He stared at her hands as if they were doing something impossible. Does it hurt less? She asked. Yes, he said slowly. For now. Then we do this again, she replied. And again. And we strengthen what we can. And for what we cannot change. She met his eyes. We learn to live without letting it rule you. He held her gaze. Something unguarded flickered there. Who taught you to speak like that? He murmured. My grandmother, Clara said. Pain visited her often. She simply refused to offer it a chair. The Duke leaned back, his shoulders lowered by a fraction. You will come again, he said. Not a question. Yes, she answered. If you wish it. I do. He paused. Miss Clara? Yes, Your Grace. If this improves even a little, you will have done what half the physicians in London could not. I am not competing with them, she said. You are competing with despair, he replied quietly. And that, Miss Clara, is a far more dangerous opponent. Ah, dear listener, One might think this was a simple scene of oil and herbs and cautious hope. But let us not be naive. The most dangerous intimacy is not found in ballrooms under chandeliers. It is found in quiet rooms where pain is acknowledged, where scars are seen, where a duke allows a woman to touch the part of him he hates most. Tell me, if you dare, would you have taken that risk, placed your hands on a wounded leg and a wounded pride? Or would you have kept a polite distance, for fear of falling in love with what you were trying to heal? If London had suspected that marriage to the Duke of Ravensworth would turn our quiet Clara into a tragic recluse, it was in for a disappointment. She did not vanish. She appeared, slowly, carefully, but undeniably. In the days that followed, Clara visited Ravensworth House twice more, once for exercises and herbs, once, shockingly, for dinner, alone, without her parents. Yes, dear listener, you may clutch your pearls now. On the third visit, she arrived just before dusk. The sky was that particular London grey that could not decide whether it wanted to rain or sulk. Clara's heart did its usual frantic dance as she stepped down from the carriage. By now, the butler no longer looked surprised to see her. Instead, he took her basket with unexpected gentleness. "This way, Miss Clara." His Grace asked that you join him in the small dining room. Small, Clara discovered, was a relative term. The small dining room could comfortably seat 12. Tonight, it seated 2. The table had been laid simply. No excess of silver, no army of footmen, just candles, porcelain, a low arrangement of white roses in the center. The Duke stood at the far end when she entered. He did not rise fully this time. He had chosen a chair with arms, one that allowed him to push himself up more easily. Even so, he made the effort. "Miss Clara." "Your Grace." She curtsied. He inclined his head. "Come, sit near the middle. If we dine at opposite ends, I shall be forced to shout, and the neighbors already think me half mad." She took the chair he indicated, comfortably close, disastrously intimate. For the first few moments, they ate in silence. Not the stiff, brittle silence of strangers, the cautious silence of people who did not yet know which subjects were safe. The Duke broke it first. "I took 10 steps this morning," he said, "without the cane." Clara set her fork down. Her throat tightened. "How did it feel?" "Like I had negotiated with the devil and won a minor clause," he replied dryly. "Painful, but not impossible." Relief flooded her. "I knew it," she breathed. He watched her. "You sound more certain of my progress than I am." "I have seen this before," Clara said, "with tenants, with my grandmother. The first improvements are always small and always fragile. If you despise them for not being miraculous, they disappear. If you honor them, they grow." He tilted his head. "You speak of pain as if it were a stubborn child." "It is," she answered. "It throws tantrums when it is ignored and sulks when indulged too much." One corner of his mouth curved. "And how, Miss Clara, do you propose we discipline mine?" "With consistency," she said. "Walk a little more each day. Rest before exhaustion. Use the herbs, and stop punishing yourself for needing help." His gaze sharpened. "I do not enjoy needing anyone." "I am aware," she said softly. "I did not say you must enjoy it, only that you must allow it." He studied her across the candles. "Do you ever tire of being so inconveniently right?" "Constantly," she replied. "No one likes to hear truth from a woman." "A fair observation," he said. "In London, we prefer our women decorative and agreeable, not corrective." "And yet you are marrying one who corrects you almost every time she sees you," Clara pointed out. He lifted his wineglass. "A sign, perhaps, that I have grown reckless. A sign," she countered gently, "that you have grown tired of being lied to." Silence settled again, but it was warm now, almost comfortable. "Do you miss it?" she asked suddenly. "The ballroom." He did not answer at once. The candles flickered. A carriage rolled past outside, its wheels echoing faintly. "I miss the choice," he said at last. "Before I could dance or refuse as I pleased. Now I refuse because I must, not because I wish to. Clara nodded. Choice, she repeated quietly. That is the wound no one sees. You understand that. Yes. I am surprised. I am a woman, she reminded him. Most of my life has been a series of choices made by others. This marriage is the first great decision I have. Half chosen. Half, he echoed. I did not seek you out, Your Grace, she said. But when truth stood between us in your study, I could have said no. I did not. He held her gaze. The air between them crackled faintly. Why? He asked. There it was. The question. Why choose the man everyone feared? The house everyone whispered about? The life no one envied? Clara swallowed. Because, she said slowly, when I looked at you, I did not see a monster. I saw a man who had been broken and decided that if the world would not be kind to him, he would stop being kind to the world. She ignored the way his jaw tightened. If I walk away from that, she continued, then I am no better than those who left you in the first place. The words were out before she could soften them. Bold, reckless, utterly, dangerously true. A muscle moved at the corner of his mouth. Most women, he said slowly, would have chosen the safer path. I am not most women, she answered. His eyes warmed, very slightly. Of that, Miss Clara, I am painfully aware. They ate in silence for a few moments more. Then he said, as casually as one might remark on the weather, there will be a ball. Clara nearly dropped her knife. A ball. At Ravensworth House. In London. Yes, he said. In London. Where else do scandals dance best? I do not understand, she confessed. Why would you invite the very people who delight in talking about you? Because, my dear Clara, he said, voice turning bone dry. If they are going to speak of me regardless, I might as well give them something worth talking about. Her heart skittered. You intend to host a ball? Yes. With your injured leg? Yes. And appear in public? With me? Yes. His gaze did not waver. Unless, of course, the notion of becoming a visible duchess in London terrifies you more than the thought of living as a shadow in my house. She sat very still. Ballroom, music, eyes, whispers, scandal. She could already feel their stares scraping against her skin. But beside that image rose another, his arm, offered to her, his cane, a little less necessary than before, the two of them standing together as a deliberate, undeniable statement. We are not hiding. She lifted her chin. When? After the third reading of the banns, he said. A celebration of our impending union, or a wake for my last shreds of privacy. I have not yet decided. You are certain, she asked, that you wish to endure a ballroom again. I am certain of very little, he said, except this. Hiding has not made life easier. Perhaps facing them will. Clara's fingers tightened around the stem of her glass. Then I will stand with you, she said quietly. In the church. In the ballroom. Wherever they stare, the hardest. Something unspoken passed between them. A pact, sealed not with ink, but with shared defiance. He leaned back. The ton will be delighted, he said. A limping duke and his country duchess opening the season of scandal. We shall be the entertainment of the year. She smiled faintly. Then let us at least give them a story worth remembering. Ah, dear listener, once again our Clara has chosen courage over comfort. A ball at Ravensworth House. A wounded duke re-entering the London ballroom. A future duchess who fears crowds, but fears wasted chances more. Tell me, in the safety of the comments, would you step into that ballroom with them? Or would you watch from the gallery, content to let others dance with scandal while you remain safely in the shadows? Preparations for a ball are, under ordinary circumstances, a torment. Preparations for a ball hosted by the most reclusive duke in London were nothing short of warfare. By morning, the entire staff of Ravensworth House moved with the frantic discipline of soldiers awaiting an unexpected inspection from the Queen herself. Footmen polished silver until their hands cramped. Maids beat dust from curtains that hadn't been touched in years. A harassed but determined housekeeper marched about barking orders like a general. And the Duke, our famously intimidating Duke, stood in the middle of it all, like a storm contained in a very expensive waistcoat. Clara arrived to find chaos disguised as efficiency. "Miss Clara," the butler greeted her. His tone carried an emotion rarely heard in servants of high households: relief. "He awaits you in the west drawing-room." Clara followed the soft carpeted corridor. Her heart beat an uneven rhythm of anticipation and dread. She found him standing beside a covered mirror. Yes, covered, as if the thing inside might bite. "Your Grace." He looked up. "Clara." "Oh." First name terms again. He did that sometimes now. Not always, just enough to rattle her lungs. "I assume," he said dryly, "you have come to lecture me on moderation, rest, and the dangers of overexertion." "Only if you intend to do all the decorating yourself," Clara replied, removing her gloves. "I've seen war generals who take better care of themselves." His mouth twitched. "I have fired 3 decorators already." "What did they do?" she asked. "Suggested lavender drapery." Clara pressed her lips together. Not to hide amusement, to hide the dangerously affectionate smile threatening to appear. "And what," she asked, "is wrong with lavender drapery?" "Everything," he said emphatically. "Your Grace, that is hardly—" "It is a color that screams desperation." "In what world?" "In my house." She gave up. Entirely, completely, unconditionally. "You survived an overturned carriage, social exile, and half the ton's cruelty," Clara said. "And yet lavender is your true undoing." He huffed out something dangerously close to a laugh. "As it happens, Miss Clara," he murmured, "I find my undoing in many unexpected places." Their eyes held for a breath too long. A dangerous breath. The kind that hinted at possibilities that did not belong in drawing-rooms. "Your housekeeper tells me," Clara said quickly, "that the ballroom has not been opened in years." "Correct." "She also tells me," Clara continued, "that the musicians are already sending inquiries." "Unfortunate." "And," she pressed, "that you are refusing to choose floral arrangements." "Absolutely." "Duke," she said, half exasperated, half fond, "you cannot simply not choose. People will talk." "They already talk." "More." He sighed. "Then allow them to talk." "No," Clara said softly. "If this ball is to restore anything, your reputation, your presence in society, your dignity, then you must allow yourself to be seen." His jaw clenched. "Seen," he echoed. "A most uncomfortable condition. You will not be alone." The words escaped her before caution could intervene. He looked at her. Not the way a duke regards a bride-to-be, but the way a man regards a light he had not expected in a long corridor. "And you?" he asked gently. "Can you bear being seen beside me?" Clara inhaled, slowly. "Yes," she whispered, "but I will be afraid." His expression shifted, softened, cracked. "Then we will be afraid together," he said. The tension eased, not into comfort, but into something deeper. Purpose, partnership. 2 people standing on the edge of a ballroom neither had chosen, but both would enter anyway. "Now," he said, clearing his throat, "there is something you must help me with." He gestured toward the covered mirror. Clara frowned. "What is it?" He did not answer. He simply pulled off the cloth. Behind it stood a tall, imposing mirror, the kind found in grand ballrooms. But the surface was not polished. It was tarnished, like something that had been avoided more than neglected. "Your Grace," Clara murmured. "What is this?" "My last attempt to dance," he said quietly. Her heart squeezed. "A year after the accident," he continued, "I thought I might attempt it. Alone. With the doors locked." He did not look at her. "I made it 3 steps." She wanted, dangerously, to reach for his hand. "Adrian," she whispered. The name slipped out. He did not flinch. "You do not have to dance at the ball," she said softly. "Not if it pains you." He turned to her then, eyes shadowed. "It is not the dance that pains me," he murmured. "It is the pity." Clara stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough that he would hear her without the world intruding. "I will not pity you," she said. "Ever." He released a long, quiet breath. "Then stay," he said. "For a moment. Here, with me." She nodded. He reached for his cane, bracing himself. "Watch," he said softly. He took one step, then another. Slow, deliberate, controlled. The third step faltered. He caught himself on the cane. A harsh breath escaped him. Clara did not rush forward, did not exclaim, did not gasp. She simply said, "Again, when you're ready." He looked up at her. And for the first time, Clara saw not the Duke, not the title, not the tragedy, but the man. A man fighting his body, and the world, and himself. He tried again, 3 steps, 4. A turn, an actual turn, a slow pivot on his good leg. He exhaled sharply. Pain, yes, but also something else. Possibility. Clara smiled. "You see," she said gently, "it is not the ballroom that defeats you. It is the memory." He held her gaze. "And you," he whispered, "what defeats you, Clara?" She swallowed. "Being unseen," she said. "Being forgotten." His jaw tightened. "Not in anger, in understanding." "Then hear me," he said quietly. He stepped closer, just enough that she felt his warmth. "I see you." Her breath trembled. "And when we enter that ballroom for the first time," he murmured, "they will see you too." The candles flickered. The house hummed with preparations. Outside, London rehearsed its gossip. Inside, something far more delicate was forming. A beginning neither of them had expected, but both desperately needed. Ah, dear listener, one might think the greatest scandal of the season will be the Ravensworth ball, but no. It will be this: a duke who learns to step forward again, and a woman who teaches him how. Tell me in the comments, would you have stayed with him in that room? Or would the mirror of your own fears have sent you running down the corridor? The announcement of the Ravensworth ball spread through London like spilled ink, fast, messy, and impossible to contain. One would think the Queen herself had declared a surprise visit. Dressmakers fainted from overwork. Musicians squabbled over who would be honored with the first waltz. Half the eligible bachelors polished their boots twice that morning. And the marriage-minded mothers. Ah, dear listener, they behaved like predators sensing the faintest whiff of blood. But the true object of all this frenzy? Not the Duke. Not this time. It was Clara, the mysterious country girl who had somehow done the impossible. She had coaxed the Duke back into society, and worse, she was rumored to be healing him. That sort of rumor was intolerable to London. A man returning from heartbreak is hardly interesting. But a man returning from heartbreak and injury? Now that was delicious. Clara had not meant to become a fascination. She had merely meant to help. Yet, fascination she was. And on this chilly Thursday morning, she was painfully aware of it as she stepped into Ravensworth House once more, invited for final preparations before the ball. She expected chaos. She expected shouting. She expected lavender drapery to be flung out windows by the Duke himself. She did not expect what she found instead: silence, warm light, and the Duke waiting for her in the grand ballroom. He stood near the tall windows, the pale winter sun casting gold over his dark hair. His cane rested beside him, not in use, though Clara suspected he had leaned on it moments before she entered. "Miss Clara," he said, with a dip of his head that was almost soft. "Your Grace." She curtsied. He watched her rise, watched her entirely, too closely. "Come here," he said, voice low. Her heart executed a rather undignified leap. She stepped forward, boots whispering over polished floors. He extended his hand. Not his arm, not a polite offer. His hand, tentative yet assured. "Take it," he said quietly. Clara hesitated only because she could feel her pulse in her fingertips. But she placed her hand in his anyway. Warmth shot up her arm. Familiar, startling, unwelcome only because it was becoming something she looked forward to. Adrian, she whispered before caution could stop her. What is this? He swallowed. A barely there movement. A test. Of what? Myself, he said, and perhaps of you. He shifted his weight. His left leg trembled. Pain flashed across his expression, but only for a moment. Do not look at my leg, he murmured. I'm not, she lied delicately. You are, he said, mouth twitching. Your honesty is both a blessing and an affliction. She huffed. I only want to know if you are pushing too hard. I am, he said plainly, but I intend to push harder. He lifted her hand higher, and then, oh heavens, he placed her palm against his shoulder, like a dance. A broken, half-remembered echo of one, but unmistakable. Clara's breath caught. Your Grace. Clara. The way he said her name made her knees feel unattached to her body. I will not ask you to dance at the ball, he said, but I must stand beside you, and for that I must practice. She blinked. But why practice with me? His eyes didn't leave hers. Because I trust you not to pity me if I fail. The room seemed to tilt. Her heart seemed to ache, not with pain, with something warmer, quieter, more dangerous. She exhaled softly, then moved closer. Very well, she said. Begin when you're ready. He tightened his fingers around hers. His other hand braced lightly on her waist. Only because balance required it, of course. Not for any scandalous reason. But the contact sent a shiver running through her spine all the same. He took one step. Clara followed. Another. Slow. Careful. Half a turn. His breath hitched. Stop, she whispered. You're pushing too far. I must. You'll damage the progress you've made. And if I stop, he murmured, I will lose the courage I've only just begun to find. Clara stared at him. At this proud, infuriating, impossible man, who would rather break himself in half than show weakness. You stubborn Duke, she said softly. You forget something. What? You're not alone anymore. He froze. Not physically, emotionally, as if the words reached a place no one had touched in years. Clara, he whispered. She stepped closer. One hand slid from his shoulder to his cheek. An act so bold she didn't recognize herself as she did it. You don't have to fight every battle alone. His eyes flickered shut. For a moment, a heartbeat, the world narrowed to two people standing in a vast, empty ballroom, holding each other upright in more ways than one. When he opened his eyes again, the softness was gone. Not replaced by coldness, by control. Tight, precise control. If you touch me again like that, he said quietly, I might forget we are not yet married. Clara's breath caught. I apologize. Do not, he said. Just be careful. Careful, she repeated, voice trembling. Of hurting you? No, he murmured. Of undoing me. She stepped back, slowly, because anything sudden might break whatever fragile restraint existed between them. Your Grace, she whispered. You are not undone. Not yet, he said, but our wedding is in 2 weeks, and I fear I am running out of time. She stared at him. He stared back. And oh, what a fire simmered beneath that calm exterior. The ballroom door creaked. A housemaid peeked in and immediately turned scarlet. They sprang apart, too quickly, which only made the scandalous impression worse. The Duke cleared his throat. Miss Clara was merely assisting me with my balance. Of course, Your Grace, the maid squeaked, eyes wide with enough speculation to fuel 50 gossip columns. Tell the staff, he added, that Miss Clara is welcome in this room at any time. Clara froze. That was not a small statement. Not for a duke. Not for a house famous for its mourning. Not for a ballroom closed since the accident. Adrian, she whispered. We will open the ballroom together, he said. Not as a performance, not as a pity spectacle, but as truth. As truth, she echoed. A vow. Unspoken, but very real. He extended his hand again. Tomorrow, he murmured. Practice continues. She took his hand. Tomorrow, she said. And there, dear listener, beneath a chandelier that had not lit in years, stood the beginning of London's next great scandal. A duke learning to stand tall again, and a woman discovering her courage in his shadow. Tell me, would you have held his hand in that empty ballroom, or fled before the feelings grew too dangerous to manage? If society believed the Ravensworth ball would be a quiet, tasteful affair, it was hopelessly mistaken. For by the next morning, invitations had begun to circulate, heavy cardstock, embossed in silver, sealed with the raven crest. And London, poor, unsuspecting London, fell into a frenzy so violent it could be heard from half a mile away. Every milliner was overrun. Every modiste was drowning in silks. Every eligible mother was plotting military-level seating arrangements. And the Duke? He was practicing walking in an empty ballroom with a country girl who was rapidly becoming the most whispered-about woman in the city. Clara arrived earlier than usual that morning. Not because she wished to, but because she couldn't sleep. Not with the memory of his hand on hers. Not with the echo of, "If you touch me again like that, I might forget we are not yet married." Her stomach had not stopped fluttering since. The butler greeted her at the door with a bow that was almost warm now. "Miss Clara, His Grace is in the library." The library, a place she had not yet dared enter. She followed the corridor, heart thudding in a far too personal rhythm. The doors were open. She paused at the threshold, and there he was. The Duke of Ravensworth, Adrian, seated near the window, a book in one hand, sunlight catching in his hair. He looked peaceful, just for a moment. Then he noticed her, and every line of his body shifted, as if he had been carved from tension and only now remembered softness. "Clara," he said, first name terms again. Her pulse stuttered. She tried to pretend it didn't. "Good morning, Your Grace." "Come in." She stepped inside. The library smelled of leather, parchment, ink, and comfort. Books lined every wall, some ancient, some untouched, some clearly revisited based on the worn edges. He closed the book gently. "You're early." "I could not sleep," she admitted. He raised an eyebrow. "Anxious?" "About the ball," she lied. Well, half-lied. He smirked. "About me, then." She nearly choked. No, Your Grace." "You are a terrible liar, Clara," she sighed. "I promised not to lie to you, and I expect you to keep that promise," he said softly. The warmth in those words was enough to send her spiraling into confusion. He stood slowly, leaning on his cane, only after rising fully. She noticed. He noticed her noticing. "You are cataloguing my movements again." Yes. "Do I pass inspection?" Her lips twitched. "Partially." "Partially," he echoed, offended. "What must a duke do to pass fully?" "Take fewer risks," she said. "Rest more. Walk less aggressively." "Less aggressively?" "Yes," she insisted. "You walk as though you're attempting to conquer the floor." He blinked. "Am I not?" She pressed her lips to avoid smiling. "Failed." "You are impossible." "You chose me," he answered smoothly. "Well," she said, "I didn't choose your stubbornness." "You chose all of me," he corrected gently. "Do not pretend otherwise." She opened her mouth, had absolutely no idea what she intended to say, and was saved by the housekeeper bursting into the library with a stack of papers. "Your Grace!" "Oh!" She curtsied hastily. "Forgive me. I did not realize Miss Clara had arrived." "Yes, well," the Duke said, voice purposely dry. "Miss Clara arrives whenever she pleases." Clara's cheeks heated. The housekeeper pretended not to notice. "These," she said, handing him the papers gingerly, "are the floral options for the ball." He recoiled, as if they might explode. "Choose," the housekeeper ordered, in the tone of a woman who had endured 2 wars, 4 dukes, and at least 12 decorating crises. "I refuse." "You must." "No." The housekeeper turned to Clara. "You choose, miss." Clara blinked. "Me?" The Duke's eyes narrowed, possessive, surprised, intrigued. She cannot choose my flowers. Someone must, the housekeeper said crisply, and she is the future duchess. Silence. Not cold, not awkward, charged. Clara swallowed. I don't know anything about floral arrangements. You know more than I do, the Duke muttered. Everyone knows more than you do, the housekeeper added. Clara looked down at the drawings. White roses, winter jasmine, blue delphiniums, silver-dusted ivy. And one particular illustration, an arrangement of pale blush roses, soft greenery, and white lilacs, caught her breath. Gentle, graceful, elegant without shouting, like her. I choose this, she said softly. The Duke walked forward, slow, controlled, each step deliberate. He looked at the page, at the flowers she had chosen, then at her. Why these? She considered. They are beautiful without trying, soft, warm, a bit shy, but radiant. He didn't look back at the page. He kept his gaze locked on her. Then we will have these. The housekeeper exhaled in relief and fled before the Duke changed his mind. Clara stared at the flowers again. They match the ballroom, she murmured. They match you, he said. Her breath hitched, and then tap, tap, tap. His cane hit the floor once, lightly, as he moved closer. Clara. Her name again. Soft, unarmored, dangerous. You will stand with me at the ball, face London with me, walk beside me. She nodded. I will. His eyes softened. Good. Because I fear I may need your courage more than my cane that night. She blinked up at him. Your courage is your own, she said. I only help you see it. Do you? Yes. The corner of his mouth curved. Then perhaps, he murmured, I have underestimated my future duchess. Clara felt her heart tighten, not painfully, hopefully. The Duke stepped back slightly. Come, he said. Today we practice not walking. Not walking? Talking. She blinked. Talking? Yes, he grimaced. Because if we do not rehearse, I will say something atrociously honest in front of the entire ton and start a fresh scandal. She smiled. What shall we practice then? He extended his hand. Begin with the most terrifying task of all, Miss Clara. And what is that? Small talk, he said gravely. She burst into laughter, and the Duke, Adrian, allowed himself the ghost of a smile in return. Dear listener, if you imagine this Duke is difficult in matters of emotion, you should see him attempt polite conversation. I fear London is in grave danger. Tell me, would you teach him small talk? Or would you leave that task to someone braver? London had survived wars, plagues, political crises, and 3 separate fashion eras that should never be spoken of again. But nothing, not even the great petticoat shortage of '38, prepared society for what happened when Clara Ashdown and the Duke of Ravensworth were spotted together in public. Yes, dear listener, together, in daylight, voluntarily. It began with a carriage ride, the Duke's idea, naturally. Clara would never have suggested something so blatantly scandalous. But that morning, when she arrived at Ravensworth House as usual, basket of herbs in hand, the Duke did not greet her in the drawing-room or library. No. He waited outside, at the door, in a beautifully cut charcoal coat and emerald cravat that made him look far too handsome for a man with a reputation for terrifying half the population. Clara, he said, offering his arm. Your Grace, she replied, trying not to stare at the cravat. You look surprised. I am. You are dressed as though you intend to be seen. His lips twitched. I do. Clara blinked. By whom? London. She blinked harder. London? Yes, he said dryly. That noisy, opinionated, meddlesome place beyond my gate. But why? Because they will see us at the ball soon enough, and I would prefer the first wave of gossip to hit before the ballroom doors open. Clara's stomach tightened. You plan to take me out, in public. He lifted a brow. In your company, Miss Clara, a man can dare anything. Her knees nearly failed her. Well, she whispered. "What will we do?" "A modest carriage ride through Hyde Park." Hyde Park, the epicenter of all gossip, the vortex of all stares, the throne room of judgmental matrons. She swallowed hard. "That is not modest." "Oh, it is," he said. "I could have suggested Bond Street." She nearly fainted. "Come," he added gently. "Take my arm." Her fingers trembled as they slid into place. He felt it. She knew he did, but he did not comment. He simply held her steady, as if it were the most natural thing he had ever done. The carriage rolled smoothly through the city. Clara tried very hard not to notice how close they were inside such a small space, how the Duke's shoulder brushed hers when the wheels hit a bump, how his gloved hand rested near hers, fingers just a breath away. But what she could not ignore, absolutely could not, were the stairs, dozens, scores, hundreds. People paused mid-conversation, turned mid-step, stopped mid-bite of pastry. A duke long absent from society suddenly riding through London? With a woman no one had ever seen before? Scandal. Delicious, intoxicating scandal. Clara shrank slightly. The duke noticed instantly. "Look at me," he murmured. She did. "Do not shrink from them," he said softly. "They do not deserve the satisfaction." "But everyone is staring." "Let them." His jaw set. "They stare because they don't know who you are yet. When they do, they will stop?" She tried to swallow the lump in her throat. "You think so?" "I know so," he said, "because I know who you are." Her breath lodged itself painfully in her chest. "Adrian." It was the first time she'd said his name without an accident, without panic. His eyes darkened, not with anger, with something she had no business recognizing. "Clara," he murmured back. The air inside the carriage tightened, shifted, tilted toward something dangerously intimate. She quickly looked out the window. Oh dear." "What now?" he sighed. "We are being followed." He glanced outside. Indeed, 3 carriages, 2 riders, and an entire flock of bonneted ladies were pretending, badly, not to trail behind. He raised a brow. "Persistent creatures." "Hungry creatures," Clara whispered, "for gossip. They will not be hungry for long. Your Grace." "Adrian, this is more attention than I expected." "It is exactly the amount I intended," he replied calmly. She stared at him. "You wanted this chaos?" "I wanted to send a message." "What message?" "That I am no longer alone," he said quietly. Her breath faltered. The carriage rounded a turn, slowing as it entered Hyde Park, and then he did something shocking. He reached for her hand, not obviously, not boldly, just a touch, a quiet, grounding contact. "Breathe," he murmured. She inhaled. He did not let go. Hyde Park was alive with activity despite the chill. Ladies strolled with parasols. Children fed ducks. Gentlemen pretended to exercise. And all of them, every single one, turned toward the Ravensworth carriage. "Do not fear them," he said. "I don't fear them," Clara whispered. "I fear misunderstanding." "They misunderstand everything," he said dryly. "It is their greatest talent." "But what will they say?" she asked. "That you bewitched me? That I rose from self-imposed exile for a woman? That healing has softened the Duke? They will say what they always say." "What is that?" "Whatever makes the best story." She bit her lip. "And what is the truth?" He turned to her fully. "You." She froze. "Me? You are the truth they cannot fathom." Her heart hammered. "I do not quite understand." He leaned closer, just enough that she could see the faint gold flecks in his eyes. "You walk into my house," he murmured, "into my pain, into my anger, into the very parts of me I despise most. And you do not flinch." Clara's breath trembled. "So yes," he said, "you are the truth they cannot comprehend." Her lips parted. "But I have done so little. You have done everything." The words hung between them like a confession. She gripped his hand tighter, only then realizing she had never let go. He looked at their joined hands, then at her. Slow, careful, dangerous. "If I were a wiser man," he murmured, "I would release your hand." "Then release it," she whispered. "I can't." Neither moved. Neither breathed properly. It was the closest thing to a kiss they had shared, without lips touching, without rules breaking, without promises spoken aloud. The carriage slowed. "We should return," she said weakly. "Yes," he murmured, "before I forget myself entirely." Not spoken, but almost. The moment the carriage stopped, their spell shattered. The door opened. The butler bowed. The housekeeper peered curiously. Clara released his hand quickly, too quickly. The Duke looked at his empty palm with the faintest flicker of disappointment. Then he offered her his arm. "Clara." "Yes?" "Tomorrow," he said, "we will practice again." "What shall we practice tomorrow?" He met her eyes. Not walking, not talking. A beat. Standing together. Her heart somersaulted. "Yes," she whispered, "I would like that." Oh, dear listener. You saw it, didn't you? The way his hand refused to let go. The way her courage grew in his presence. The way London now whispers a single question. Is this marriage merely arranged, or has the Duke already fallen? Tell me. Would you have held his hand in the carriage, or pulled away before the world noticed the spark? The night of the Ravensworth ball arrived with the kind of theatrical timing that would make even heaven raise an approving brow. London was wrapped in a thin curtain of mist. Not enough to spoil silk. Just enough to make every gas lamp glow like something out of a story. Carriages lined the street outside Ravensworth House. Hooves struck the cobblestones. Fans fluttered in anticipation. And the raven crest gleamed above the door, no longer a warning. An invitation. Inside, the ballroom was transformed. Soft candlelight spilled from crystal chandeliers. The walls were adorned with garlands of pale blush roses and white lilacs, the flowers Clara had chosen. They softened the sharp edges of the room, lightened the shadows that had clung there for too many years. Whispers moved through the crowd like smoke. "The Duke is really hosting. He looks almost well, they say. He has a new fiancée. The quiet one, from the countryside. I heard she healed his leg with herbs and some kind of rustic magic." "Oh, don't be absurd." "Absurd or not, he invited us, didn't he?" "Yes, but why?" "To be seen, to show them, to reclaim something that had been stolen. But of course, dear listener, London would never guess anything so dignified. They preferred scandal. And tonight, they would get both." Clara stood at the top of the staircase, alone, just for a moment. Her gown was a soft shade of blue that hovered between sky and frost. The neckline modest, the sleeves delicate. Tiny embroidered leaves traced their way along the hem, like something growing quietly across snow. Her hair had been twisted into a graceful arrangement, with a few rebellious curls that refused to obey pins. She looked not like Marianne, not like the shining bells of the season. She looked like herself, only more visible. Her hands shook slightly on the banister. The ballroom below blurred for a moment. Too many eyes, too many expectations. Choice, she remembered. This time, she had chosen. Clara. The voice at her side steadied her more effectively than the carved rail. She turned. He stood there. Adrian, the Duke of Ravensworth, dressed in deep midnight blue, with a crisp white cravat and a waistcoat embroidered so subtly that only someone standing very close would ever see the pattern. His cane was in his right hand. His left was free. He offered it to her. Palm up. Steady. "Are you ready?" he asked. "No," she said honestly. He huffed out a breath that was almost a laugh. "Nor am I." She placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm, firm, grounding. "Shall we be unready together?" he asked softly. Yes. They took the first step. Slow, deliberate. The ballroom noticed. Of course it did. Conversations faltered. Fans stilled. Music softened just enough that everyone could hear the rhythm of cane on polished wood. Tap, Step, tap, step, pain, yes. But he moved with something else now. Determination. And beside him, Clara moved as if she had always belonged at his side. They reached the bottom of the stairs without disaster. The housekeeper exhaled a prayer of thanks behind a pillar. The butler adjusted his cravat with satisfaction. London held its breath. Adrian turned to her. "Ready for the worst part," he murmured. "What is the worst part?" she whispered back. He looked out over the sea of faces. The greetings. An older duchess swept forward first. Her diamonds could have paid off every one of the Ashdown debts twice over. "Your Grace," she said with a purr, "London is delighted to see you risen from the grave." "Not quite dead yet," Adrian replied blandly. Her gaze slid to Clara. "And this must be the miracle worker." The words could have been cruel. They weren't. Not entirely. Mostly curious. "Miss Clara Ashdown," he said. "My future duchess." He said it calmly, firmly, as if daring anyone to object. Clara curtsied. "Your Grace." The older woman studied her for a heartbeat that stretched into 3. Then she smiled, not politely, approvingly. "To do what you've done, my dear," she said, "you must have more steel in you than silk." Clara blinked. "Thank you," she managed. "I think." "Good," the Duchess said briskly. "You will need it. Society does not know what to do with women who are both kind and unafraid." She glided away. More guests approached. Viscounts, lords, ladies in gowns that seemed designed to outshine the chandeliers. Each one stared, assessed, tested. Some offered veiled barbs. Some offered thinly disguised pity. Some offered nothing at all. Adrian's hand never left Clara's. Every cutting remark slid against the wall his presence built around her. Once, when a particularly sharp-tongued lady commented, "Such a fragile creature for such a tragic duke," Clara opened her mouth to reply. Adrian beat her to it. "On the contrary," he said dryly, "I have discovered that the most unassuming flowers often have the deepest roots and the sharpest thorns." He squeezed Clara's hand, lightly, privately. "A question." "Do you regret this?" he murmured, when the crowd swirled away for a moment. "Standing here, with me, in the center of all this." She looked up at him, at the lines carved by pain and anger and long years of solitude, at the warmth that now lived where only shadows had been. "No," she whispered. "I have never regretted stepping into the truth." His throat moved. Once. He tilted his head toward the musicians. "The first waltz is about to begin," he said. She felt her stomach drop. "You said you would not dance." "I said," he corrected quietly, "that I would not ask you to dance." He paused, "but I did not account for what I might want." The opening notes of the waltz floated through the air, soft, sweet, taunting. He looked at her then, no shield, no distance. "Clara," he said, "not Miss, not Ashdown, just Clara. If I take 3 steps with you in front of all London, I may fall. I may falter. I may make a spectacle of myself." He held her gaze. "Will you walk those 3 steps with me anyway?" Her heart twisted, not from fear, from love. Because yes, dear listener, there it was, finally named, not out loud, not yet, but fully formed in her chest. Love. Love that had grown in the quiet, in the pain, in the way he listened, in the way he let her help, in the way he no longer hid his scars from her. She lifted her chin. "Yes," she said, "I would walk 3 steps with you, or 300, or none at all, if all you can bear tonight is standing." His eyes closed briefly. When he opened them, something fierce lived there, something tender. "Then let us give them their scandal," he murmured, "and claim our own redemption in the process." He offered his hand. She placed hers in it. They moved to the floor. The crowd parted. The whispers spiked into a hum. The Duke of Ravensworth and his country bride. Center of the ballroom. Center of every conversation. Adrian placed his right hand lightly at her waist. Her left settled on his shoulder. His cane flashed once, then he handed it to a waiting footman. Gasps. Actual gasps. The music swelled. He took a breath. "So," he murmured, "we begin." The first step hurt. She saw it. He did not hide it from her. He did not pretend. The second step hurt less. The third did not hurt at all. Not because the pain had fled. Because something else had become louder. Her hand in his. Her gaze steady on his face. Her silent promise, "I am here. You are not alone." They turned slowly. Not the sweeping, effortless arc of perfectly healthy couples. A careful turn. Measured. Intentional. Real. Somewhere in the crowd, someone sniffed in disapproval. Somewhere else, someone wiped at their eyes. Most simply stared, unable to look away. A man they had mocked for hiding his brokenness now revealed it. Not as a tragedy, as truth. He finished the turn. His breath was ragged. Sweat beaded faintly at his temple. Clara's thumb brushed over the back of his hand once. Proud. Not pitying. "Enough," she whispered. He nodded. "Yes." He signaled to the musicians with a small gesture. The waltz shifted, blending back into the swell of general music as other couples were nudged onto the floor. Conversation resumed. Sound rushed back around them, like waves around a rock. Adrian reached for his cane. The footman placed it back into his grasp, silently, a flicker of respect in his eyes. "3 steps," he said softly to Clara. "3 steps and a turn," she corrected. He smiled then. Truly smiled. It changed his entire face. "Stay with me," he said. She squeezed his hand. "I was just about to ask you the same thing." They moved toward a quieter corner of the ballroom. The murmurs followed. Naturally. Can you believe it? He danced. With her. She held him as if there was nothing wrong at all. As if he were whole. Ah, but that is where they were wrong. He was not whole because she pretended he wasn't broken. He was becoming whole because she saw the brokenness and did not turn away. They reached a pair of tall windows overlooking the misty garden. The noise of the ballroom faded just enough for them to breathe. "You have done it now," Clara said, her voice shaking with delayed nerves. "Done what?" "Given them a story they will tell for years." He looked down at her. "Let them," he said. "I am done living by their stories." His gaze dropped to her lips, slowly, reluctantlessly, as if dragged there by something he could not fight. Her heart stuttered. "Adrian," she whispered. "Yes, I need to tell you something before I forget how to speak. Judging by past interactions, that seems unlikely." "Please," she said. His teasing softened. "If you wish to speak truth, Clara," he murmured, "you know I will hear it." She took a breath, then another, then stepped away from the safety of silence and into the wild, terrifying open. "I did not marry you for duty," she said. He stilled. "We have not married yet," he replied, "but I accept the implied promise." She shook her head, impatient with her own fluster. "I mean, I agreed because of duty, at first, for my family, for the estate, for necessity." Her hands twisted in her skirts. "But that is not why I am here now." He said nothing. He simply watched, listened. "Every time you let me touch your pain," she whispered, "something in me healed too. Every time you let me tell you the truth, I learned I had a voice. Every time you refused to hide from me, you showed me that love does not live in perfection. It lives in scars, in courage, in trying again." She looked up at him through eyes that burned. "London calls you broken," she said. "But when I stand beside you, I do not feel your brokenness. I feel your strength." Her voice shook now. "I thought I was coming here to heal your leg, but somewhere along the way, I gave you my heart." The words fell between them like something sacred. He closed his eyes, just for a moment. When he opened them, they shone. Not with tears. Oh no, he would never give the ton that satisfaction, but with something deeper. "Clara," he said. Her name was a prayer. A girl I did not choose walked into my house, into my grief, into my fury, and refused to flee. His thumb brushed along her knuckles. You call me strong, he murmured, but you are the one who stepped forward when everyone else stepped back. He took a breath, then tore away the last of his pride and laid it at her feet. I was a man the world had decided was finished, he said quietly. Useless for ballroom, unsafe for romance, unsuitable for admiration. He shook his head. You walked into that narrative and rewrote it without asking permission. His hand came up to her cheek. His fingers were warm. Sure. Love, he said, the word tasting strange and right on his tongue, has always seemed a cruel thing to me. It left when the carriages overturned. It vanished with my former fiancé's signature. He swallowed. But with you, I have learned that love can be something else. Not a quiet promise made in perfect health, a fierce, stubborn choice made in the middle of pain. Her eyes blurred. He stepped closer. The rest of the ballroom disappeared. You have given me back my courage, he whispered. My house, my future, myself. His breath brushed her lips. In exchange, Clara Ashdown, I give you what I did not think I still possessed. She hardly dared breathe. My heart, he said simply. It is yours, entirely, irrevocably, for as long as you wish to keep it. He kissed her. Not a chaste brush of lips. Not a desperate claiming. A promise. Gentle, steady, certain. The ballroom might have gasped. Someone might have dropped a fan. 2 or 3 dowagers might have actually smiled. It did not matter. In that moment, there was only them. A duke who had stopped believing in redemption. A woman who had always lived unseen. Now standing in the center of scandal and choosing love anyway. When they finally parted, he rested his forehead against hers. You will be my duchess, he said. Not because London expects it, because I cannot imagine a life in which you are not beside me. She smiled through the tears that finally escaped. And you, she whispered, will be my duke. Not because you are a title, because you are a man who chose truth over appearance, healing over hiding, and love over fear. Ah, dear listener, does one need any clearer proof that the heart is far more stubborn than gossip? A girl from the countryside, a man who limped back into the ballroom. Love, betrayal, redemption, healing, all wrapped into one scandalous waltz. If this is not a story worth remembering in London, then perhaps London has lost its taste for real romance. Now it is your turn, my ever-curious heart. Would you dare to love a duke with scars the world can see? Would you allow someone to see the ones the world cannot? Tell me in the comments what part of this story touched you most. The ballroom, the healing, the scandal, or the moment love finally spoke its name. And if your heart found a little comfort, courage, or hope here tonight, do not forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone who loves a good Duke and Duchess romance, and leave your own confession of what love means to you. Until the next story, dear listener, may your courage be quiet but unshakable, and may your heart always find its way back to the truth.